Hello and welcome to China Now. I am Stanley Kwabla Arku. Each week on the program, we take a closer look at the key developments, trends, and ideas emerging from China and how they shape our world. From politics, technology, and trade and innovation, China Now gives you the context behind the headlines. Now, let's begin with China currents. We will start with China's newest aircraft carrier, the Fujian, which has officially entered service, signaling a new era in the country's naval power. We'll also look at how Starbucks is losing its grip on Chinese coffee markets as local competitors surge ahead. Then we will explore how Chinese scientists are reviving a nuclear power technology once thought impossible, making a major leap in clean energy research. All that and more in today's China Currents.
Welcome to China Currents. In this episode, China's aircraft carrier Fujian enters service, raising eyebrows in the US and Taiwan. Starbucks loses out to local competitors in China, selling 60% of its business at a bargain price. China revives nuclear power technology once deemed dead by the US and Soviet Union. In Beijing, neuroscientists made breakthroughs that could lead to new antidepressants with fewer side effects. And a humanoid female robot walking with a graceful 36-step catwalk has taken the internet by storm. Now let's start today's China Currents. On November 5th, China's aircraft carrier Fujian was officially commissioned in Sanya, Hainan, becoming the third aircraft carrier that China currently owns. In terms of carrier strength, China has undeniably become the second largest power in the world. As China's first electromagnetic catapult aircraft carrier, Fujian's performance metrics are on par with those of US carriers. The Fujian is completely self-designed and constructed by China, with its core advantages lying in two areas. First, it uses electromagnetic catapult technology, which is far more efficient than the steam catapults used by US carriers. And second, the ship is equipped with KJ-600 airborne early warning aircraft and J-35 carrier-based fighter jets. Additionally, the 055 class destroyer, part of the carrier group, is considered one of the top-performing destroyers in the world today. For decades, only the United States had the complete ability to develop, build, and operate super aircraft carriers. The commissioning of China's Fujian has broken the monopoly of Western powers in supercarrier technology. In discussing Fujian, comparisons are also being made with the current state of US aircraft carriers. The US currently has 11 nuclear-powered aircraft carriers, including 10 Nimitz-class carriers and 1 Ford-class carrier, but only 3 to 4 are currently deployable. The Ford-class carrier's electromagnetic catapult technology has a failure rate far higher than expected. The original design goal was 1 failure for every 4,166 launches, but in actual testing, the failure rate occurs every 181 launches on average. In the event of war, these carriers could need to launch around 200 times per day, which means their catapults would frequently need repairs. Meanwhile, many of the Nimitz-class carriers, which the United States Navy currently relies on, have been in service for nearly 50 years. Jin Cairong, a renowned Chinese expert on national issues, predicts that in the coming years, the US aircraft carriers' combat capabilities will likely continue to decline while China's naval aircraft carriers will steadily rise in capability. And this trend will become even more apparent in the next 10 to 20 years. Next, let's look at the latest developments of Starbucks in China. Recently, Starbucks officially announced the sale of 60% of its business in China, valued at about $2.4 billion. The buyer is the Chinese private equity firm Boyu Capital. Starbucks also announced an ambitious target to expand its network from more than 8,000 stores in China to 20,000 stores. This goal has been ridiculed by Chinese financial media as a wish list, especially given the highly competitive bubble tea and coffee market in China, where Starbucks no longer holds its former dominance. Starbucks entered China on January 11, 1999. At that time, China's GDP per capita was only $780, and a Starbucks coffee cost more than $5. As China's economy grew, white-collar and middle-class consumers became Starbucks' loyal customers. At its peak in 2017, Starbucks' market share in China's coffee market reached 43%. And during that time, some local governments even gave preferential treatment to Starbucks when selecting companies for industrial clusters. However, in recent years, the rise of local coffee brands in China has driven down the price of a cup of coffee to below $1.5, while launching new products each month and aggressively expanding into third and fourth tier cities, areas that Starbucks has long ignored. Currently, Starbucks' market share has fallen to 14%, trailing behind Luckin Coffee with 35% and Coty Coffee with 18%. Industry insiders widely believe that Starbucks faces multiple challenges, including stagnant innovation and high prices. Its performance cannot be improved significantly with minor adjustment. It requires a complete reform. And next, let's explore China's next-generation nuclear power technology. Last week, the Chinese Academy of Sciences announced that its 2-megawatt thorium-based molten salt reactor in the Gobi Desert region of northern China achieved the world's first thorium to uranium fuel conversion, becoming the only reactor capable of making thorium burn. Thorium-based molten salt reactors were proposed by US scientists during the Cold War, but were sentenced to death due to complex operational conditions and the inability to rapidly convert to nuclear weapons. The success of Chinese scientists means humanity is one step closer to the next generation of safer, more environmentally friendly nuclear power plants. Considering China's abundant and easily accessible thorium resources, such as the reserves in Baiyun Ebo in Mongolia, which can supply the country for more than 1,000 years, China is well positioned for long-term energy security. The research push in China began after the Fukushima nuclear disaster in 2011, which drew global attention to nuclear safety. The safety features of thorium reactors led China to invest 22 billion RMB, partnering with over 100 research institutions to tackle the technology. Compared to today's mainstream nuclear power plants that uses pressurized water reactors, which must shut down regularly to replace fuel rods, operate under extreme high pressure of about 150 atmospheres, and produce large amounts of nuclear waste, thorium-based molten salt reactors, or TMSRs, can run continuously without refueling, operate at a normal pressure, and solidify after a leak, making them inherently safer. TMSR's advantage of not needing water for cooling makes it possible to deploy nuclear plants in arid or inland regions. Additionally, the characteristic of TSMRs operating at a normal pressure opens doors to nuclear applications on large vessels and mobile platforms. According to the official timeline, China plans to complete a 100-megawatt thorium-based molten salt reactor demonstration plant by 2035, with commercialization expected by 2040. And by 2050, China aims to have 50 thorium reactors nationwide, with a total installed capacity of 50 million kilowatts, meeting 10% of China's electricity demand. Now let's look at some breakthroughs for patients suffering from depression. Depression is one of the leading mental illnesses worldwide, affecting the lives of millions. New research by Chinese scientists hold promise for improving the treatment experience for patients suffering from treatment-resistant depression. On November 6, a Chinese research team published their findings in Nature, uncovering the shared mechanism behind rapid and strong antidepressant effect of ketamine and electroconvulsive therapy, or ECT, the adenosine signaling pathway. This discovery could pave the way for new antidepressant treatments with fewer side effects. Both ketamine and ECT are currently effective interventions for treatment-resistant depression, offering rapid and powerful effects within hours. However, the exact mechanisms behind these therapies remain unclear, and they come with side effects like hallucinations, cognitive damage, and memory decline, making them risky for patients and preventing wide application. The team led by Luo Mingmin at Chinese Institute for Brain Research, in collaboration with several top Chinese labs, used gene-encoded fluorescent probes to discover that for the first time that both ketamine and ECT caused a dramatic, sustained increase in adenosine levels in key brain areas regulating mood. They also found that when adenosine receptors in the brain were turned off for antidepressant effects of both therapies completely disappeared. This research successfully separates therapeutic effects from side effects, providing a clear roadmap for developing the next generation of medications. Next, let's look at the progress in China's humanoid robot. On November 5th, Xiaopeng, a Chinese electric vehicle brand, launched its new generation humanoid robot, Iron. Standing 1.78 meters tall and weighing 70 kilograms, this female robot walked 36 steps in less than 10 meters, causing an internet sensation across China. In a widely circulated video, Iron walks smoothly and naturally, shifting centers of gravity to support foot transitions rather than moving with traditional slow mechanical steps. The realism makes many netizens to comment, "It looks like a real person trying to act like a robot." To respond to skepticism, Xiaopeng CEO He Xiaopeng released an unedited video on social media, opening the zipper at the back of the robot, cutting open fabric and revealing its internal structures. He said, "Some people don't believe the world is changing so quickly." According to Xiaopeng's official description, the new generation Iron is a one-to-one replica of a human with a bionic spine, bionic muscles, and a full wrapping flexible skin. It features 22 degrees of freedom in its hands, just 5 fewer than humans. It can perform tasks like holding eggs, folding clothes, and organizing items. Additionally, Iron uses solid-state battery technology, ensuring lightweight construction, ultra-high energy density, and safety, providing long endurance and safe operation in complex environments. He Xiaopeng revealed that the new generation Iron will enter mass production by the end of 2026, and Xiaopeng has already partnered with Bao Steel for its use in complex industrial environments, such as inspections. In the future, Iron will be used in commercial scenarios like guiding, sales, and crowd management. And that's all for today. See you next time.
Let's do Thinkers Forum. This week, Malaysia's former Minister for Transport, Ong Tingkat, joins us to discuss the renewed tensions between the United States and China and what they mean for Asian countries caught between two great powers. Mr. Ong shares his perspective on Trump's new tariff threats, the region's shifting trade priorities, and the growing debate over the de-dollarization. He also reflects on the rise of multipolar world and whether smaller nations truly have the independence to chart their own course amid competition of giants.
From my perspective, I could foresee that the next phase of US-China economic relations is set to be rocky, continuously rocky, as we can predict. And at the same time, the tit-for-tat kind of a mutual checkmate between the two titans certainly is going to bring along a lot more uncertainties to both countries as well as the entire region in Southeast Asia. That is my main concern. And having known that, with due respect, President Donald Trump is having such a capricious character, that certainly would exacerbate the worsening scenario in the region. Additionally, with due respect to President Donald Trump, having known his character of being capricious, I could foresee that more uncertainties might come into the picture. And that is going to impact not just the economic ties between the two major powers, but also at the same time impacting the entire global free trade that we have been trying at all costs to maintain. This also set a very bad example in the major power diplomacy, because I could see that his words and deeds have indeed deprived of the major power diplomacy of every ounce of finesse and decorum. All along, Asian countries, particularly the ASEAN member states, have been caught in between the geopolitical rivalry between United States and China. And now with the tariff imposed by Donald Trump, certainly they are now facing more odds than ever before in dealing with the two powers. And I can foresee that this might further suffocate the latitude for ASEAN member states to maintain its position of picking no side in the rivalry. All along, we have been trying very hard to promote the so-called ASEAN centrality alongside maintaining the stance of picking no side between the two powers. But now that the latitude seems to be narrowing, we are given literally limited choice to choose from. And knowing very well that most of the ASEAN member states are trading nations, and the United States remains one of the key markets now for our products, including my Malaysian exports. So, when President Donald Trump imposed such a tariff, in fact, it's not just one tariff. It's not just the reciprocal tariff, but also other tariffs like his threats of imposing 100% tariff on countries, particularly the BRICS countries, for not using US dollars in the trade settlements. That is another threat issued against us, against the ASEAN member states, which are also the BRICS alliance, BRICS plus nations. So with all this in mind, certainly small nations like ours, we stand to be intimidated on one hand, and on the other hand, now certainly we are yearning for some changes in the global order. More so now when we are transitioning to a more egalitarian order, the multipolar order, which we have been talking about these few years. In fact, with or without the rivalry, now given the kind of straitjackets that we need to grapple with in all these years, ASEAN member states, alongside some other developing countries or the emerging economies, we have been trying to use our local currency for cross-border trade settlements. I think this has been on the card for quite some years, all right? And we have been doing that. Countries like Malaysia, Indonesia, and Thailand, now we have been embarking on this. This is not something prompted by China-US rivalry, okay? But having been intimidated now with such a harsh tariff, the so-called 100% tariff again, right? On top of the reciprocal tariff, going to be imposed on countries using non-US dollars, including our local currency, now for the trade settlements. Now certainly, this would throw our exporters out of balance. And until today, we have yet to know what's next, whether or not the United States is going to impose this. But it remains a Damocles sword dangling above our heads. The global order is now evolving towards multipolarity. This is a statement which I would say we need to be cautiously optimistic. Having acknowledged this, we have also need to be wary of now the attitude of some emerging economies or developing countries in adopting what I call the juxtaposition of betting on one hand on the rising demands for more equitable, more egalitarian order, and on the other hand, they remain skeptical of the post-reset order, whether or not now this signifies the rise of another hegemon in the making. This is the common apprehension among some of these emerging economies, including those in Southeast Asia. So, having had this psyche in mind, I would say that this would certainly give Washington the kind of a leverage that they want to weaken the solidarity within the Global South bloc. And all in all, my final analysis is, while we have reasons to cheer on the possible dawning of a new era, let us be more realistic. The order is evolving, but it is not going to have a complete change, complete transition abruptly within a short span of time. That means to say, while we are cautiously ushering in the multipolar order, on the other hand, the American exceptionalism is not going to stop abruptly. So we have to bear with all this, and we have to tread very carefully between the two, right? Not just the rivalry between Beijing and Washington, but more importantly, between the existing order and the new order.
From your perspective, why is this commemoration particularly very significant, especially to the Global South today? Let's start on that tangent.
Well, for the Global South, the history of the anti-fascist war is extremely important. You know, in the period after the 1880s, during the high point of imperialism, the European countries effectively behaved like fascists when it came to, let's say, the continent of Africa. In the area of Southwest Africa, Germany conducted the genocide of the Herero, of the Nama people. The Italians aerial bombarded Libya. For the first time, aerial bombardment was done. It was in Libya in 1911. These regimes, Germany, Italy, but also the Western European regimes, were all basically tending to forms of fascism, you know, one way or the other. I mean, they might have had a parliament, they might have had elections, but they were tending to fascist violence. And in fact, between 1937, when the war begins in Asia between China and Japan, when Japan invades parts of China, between then and 1945, it was really the Chinese and the Soviets who sacrificed 50 million people that defeated the fascist menace, that defeated the fascist scourge. What they were not able to do was to overthrow imperialism in total. That they were not able to do. But they certainly defeated fascism. It wasn't the British and the United States that defeated fascism. It was the Soviets and the Chinese. Very important for us to remember that. And had they got their way, they might have been able to overthrow imperialism. And I think that's the reason why that war is so important for the global South.
Thank you very much. You took me right into my second question because you spoke about, the commitment, the dedication, the people who lost their lives, fighting this.
I mean, you
We
got to
tend to
remember. Yeah, go
marginalize.
ahead.
Yes, yes, yes.
Go
Oftentimes
ahead.
we do not really look at the contribution that these people have, made towards this. You know, why is this the dominant historical narrative out there? Why aren't we telling the story the way it should be told? What's your perspective on that?
Well, firstly, most people on the African continent have no idea that Africans went to Europe to fight against fascism. We don't have a memory of that. Osman Sembene's movie Camp at Thiore is one of the attempts to lift that into the public record. But larger than that, every movie that comes out about World War II is about young, American soldiers from Iowa, played by Tom Hanks, going to win the day. But that's not exactly the way it happened. The way it happened was that the Soviet Red Army, to immense sacrifice, rushed through Eastern Europe to get to Berlin. I mean, it's the Soviets that really break the back of the Nazi war machine. And the only reason the Soviets can do this is because in Asia, the Chinese troops have held up the Japanese. If the Japanese had invaded the Soviet Union from the east, there's no way the Soviet Union would have been able to fight off the Germans. So, really, the sacrifices, the deaths is one thing, the battlefield victory is another. And it was the Soviet Red Army that destroyed the German Wehrmacht, the German war machine. It was the Soviets who did it with the assistance of the Chinese.
Can you hear me, comrade?
Yes, now we can. But I think it's off and on, really.
Hi,
Okay,
comrade.
there she is. There she is. Okay,
Just a minute for me.
not at all. Now you are there. Previously, you were somewhere else.
Yes, yes, yes. Perks of doing a media job. We are all over the place at all the time.
I
But
agree.
good. I think that is very clear now.
Okay.
Because you can hear me.
Yeah, absolutely.
Right. So far we've had conversations around the importance of, this 80th anniversary celebration. We're going to narrow the conversation down into the actual conference eventually. But before we move on to that, I want to ask you briefly, what lessons can be drawn from this struggle? We find ourselves in a dilemma. I like to call it the dilemmas of humanity. There's so many issues that confront the world. We still see neo-fascism reeling its head, so what can we do in addressing all of the situation, comrade?
Well, when we look at something like the big anti-fascist war, I mean, one of the stunning features of it is the immense courage that people showed, the bravery. They fought off modern armies. They were extremely brave. The level of sacrifice was incredible. I mean, today, what are people willing to put themselves on the line for? What are people willing to sacrifice themselves for? Do we have a great idea? Would people today sacrifice themselves for pan-Africanism, or to build a post-capitalist world? What will people do? I mean, what will motivate a young person to put their life into something that's not doesn't involve accumulating money? I think that's a huge lesson. In that period, people said, listen, the fascist scourge is against humanity. If we don't fight it, then we're going to lose everything. And I think that's something, and I watched that in how young people are confronted by climate change, for instance. They say that if we don't sacrifice to fight this, what's the point? And so I think you can see elements of that courage today. But we really need to teach people what that courage has meant, for the longevity of humanity.
Right. Thank you very much, comrade. Now let's have a broader conversation, about the global South cooperation and so on and so forth. You happen to have written extensively about South cooperation, the renewal of global solidarity, global South solidarity, and so on and so forth. How do you see the current phase of that cooperation evolving, especially amid the intensifying global polarization? What does South cooperation look like today?
Well, I mean, after the world financial crisis of 2007, 2008, I think a lot of southern countries began to realize that, look, there's no scope for us to rely upon the markets of the United States or Europe. And therefore, they began to increase trade with each other. I mean, the statistics will show you that South-South trade has increased dramatically. And if you look on the African continent, for instance, trade to Europe or trade to the United States has decreased as a percentage of trade, whereas trade to other southern areas has increased dramatically, particularly Africa-China trade has increased dramatically. So these countries already know the value and importance of South-South cooperation and trade. I mean, unfortunately, most of the South-South cooperation is around trade, which is why I shifted from cooperation to trade. It should be about other things. We need to see more university, students go across from one country to another. We need to see much more media cooperation. We would like to see a great deal more cooperation in terms of ideas, the ideas being developed in one country shared with another. We need more research institutes and so on that are cooperating. I mean, why is it that in the BRICS project, it was the BRICS bank that got established? What about more resources towards the BRICS academic forum or cultural interactions, book publishing, television shows, and so on? We're just not seeing enough South-South cultural and intellectual cooperation. Uh,
It was muted. Sorry. I'm saying that there still is a lot more that we'd have to do in terms of South-South cooperation. But GSAF 2025 is coming up next month, and it's being hosted in China. And we know that China positions itself as a partner in building a shared future for humanity. Let me ask you, Comrade Vijay, how do you view China's current role in shaping South-South relations? You've highlighted some in your previous, response, but talk to us about that.
well, it's important to recognize that the Chinese government has to play a double role. On the one side, it has to do what's best for the Chinese people, which means sometimes putting the interests of China ahead of countries that it deals with. That's a normal course for any country. But secondly, it has committed itself to internationalism, which means, assisting and building relations with countries around the world so that the Global Governance Initiative or Shared Future for Humanity, all of these are about internationalism. But that double nature is important to deal with because there are times when a country like China will have to learn that it might have to set aside its national interest in the service of internationalism. And I think China is learning that. It's an extremely patriotic country with high levels of patriotism among the population, and that has to now grow into much higher consciousness of internationalism. Given that it's a leading country of the global South, it has to lead us in internationalism. I'd like to see a lot more of that. I'd like to see much more public debate and discussion in China on international issues. For instance, what more can China do for Cuba? What more can China do for the Palestinians and so on? This is very important to lift the kind of patriotic consciousness in China into an internationalist one. And it's not easy to do, but it has to be done.
It definitely has to be done. Comrade, you spoke succinctly about, internationalism and so on and so forth. But I mean, talking about conferences, we do know or we do appreciate and remember the Bandung, the Tricontinental Conferences, and all of these conferences were historic in uniting post-colonial nations. Do you see the GSAF 2025 as a continuation of that legacy? I do know that it's a forum that it's sort of building an academic community and so on and so forth. But what dimensions does this bring to that old tradition, the existing conferences that have been held in the past?
Well, of course, the Global South Academic Forum is not exactly like those because those were intergovernmental or directly inter-movement conferences. The Global South Academic Forum, although does share something with them, and that is the attempt to put important ideas of our time on the table. The Bandung Conference, for instance, put the idea of development and peace on the table. That was the principal themes of the Bandung Conference. The Tricontinental Conference put on the table the importance of struggle, of socialism, of transformation of society, and so on. The Global South Academic Forum is going to this year put on the table the importance of bravery, the importance of fighting against fascism, what it meant for a people to stand up and defend something they believe in. I hope we put that big idea on the table, and I hope that people who come for the forum and who later read the text of the forum will get a sense of what it means to be brave, what it means not to succumb to the lies of the powerful. I think that's what I'm looking forward to.
Absolutely. It's interesting to hear about all of that. And I'm definitely looking forward to being a part of the conference. But looking at, the information I've received so far about GSAF, it sort of positions itself as an intellectual stronghold of the Global South. There's a lot of academics, there's people who are coming to share ideas on how to solve real life problems. In your view, what does it mean to build such an academic community, that genuinely reflects the priorities and the voices of the South, of the Global South? You speak so much about bravery, establishing, resilience, and so on and so forth.
Yeah, look, frankly, we are in the middle of what is known, or what Fidel Castro, I think, could pretty precisely call the battle of ideas. That's what we're in the middle of. We are engaged in the battle of ideas. In other words, we want to contest imperialist ideas about what the world is like and what the world should be like. That's what we are in the middle of. And if in that battle of ideas we are able to provide a view of the world that makes sense to other people, well, that's exactly what we want to do. We want to put forward a view of the world that makes sense for people. So yeah, there are academics, there are movement leaders, movement intellectuals, and so on at GSAF. It's not a strictly academic conference. It's a battle of ideas space. And I very much hope that as years go by, it will become more and more influential.
You have taken me right into our next conversation, and you have highlighted nicely, well put together, that one of the GSAF stated goals is to challenge Western dominance. It's definitely about the knowledge, media, the battle of ideas, and so on. How can intellectual institutions like Tricontinental, which you carry with so much effort and work, help to reclaim the narrative, in the global discourse?
I mean, there's no formula for this. You have to just try to do it. I mean, we think we are in the middle of an argument with people with whom we disagree. We think we are in all the correct forums making the argument, making the claim to millions of people around the world that you've got to understand that, for instance, in our time, development and peace are better than war and austerity or war and starvation. We want to make the argument why development and peace are better. And we use every single forum to make that argument, including academic forums, public forums, and so on. I mean, it's just important to be out there reminding people that to bomb a bridge is easy, but you, in the end, just have rubble. But to build a bridge can improve people's lives. And we are very much in the business of trying to think of new ways to improve people's lives.
Very interesting. I'm happy to know that, comrade. Let's take the conversation also into the fact that this conference speaks a lot about reviving the spirits or the anti-fascist spirit. It's as a result of it being an urgent call of the era. How would you define this spirit in the context of today's global crisis, the crisis of war, inequality, climate collapse, and even disinformation as well?
Well, the main thing is that in the planet, there's about 7 billion people, but most people are not motivated to either try to change the planet or to keep the planet as it is. Most people tend to have very little interest in politics, tend to want to coast through life and so on. I mean, it's our view that we want to motivate as many people as possible to get involved with us, to promote peace and development. And so we are very much part of the camp of motivators, or what Antonio Gramsci called the permanent persuader. We believe the need to be permanent persuaders is paramount. And that's precisely what we are trying to do, is to create the will amongst ourselves to be permanent persuaders, but also to attract more and more people to be permanent persuaders in their own communities. We need to be out there drawing people in, and exploring with people the importance of arguing to make a better world. I mean, there's no substitute for being a permanent persuader at all. I mean, you can say, well, I'm an organizer, not an intellectual. Well, both of you, organizers and intellectuals, have to be permanent persuaders.
Right, Comrade, thank you very much. But I'm interested to know, before we wrap up with this conversation, why we as Africans should look forward to this conference. It's something that I want to find out from you, how important this is to us as Africans specifically.
Well, one of the interesting features of the African continent is it's extremely young continent. The median age is very low. Malawi, for instance, the median age is 18. That means half the population is under the age of 18. Young people need to solve myriad important problems, from climate to economics. And if young people, which is really the African population, if young Africans are not willing to get motivated to help make the world a better place, Africa is in for a great deal of trouble.
Right. I'm also curious to know, for instance, what outcomes are you hoping from where you sit that the GSAF 2025 will deliver? And I'm not talking about just the events, but also as viewing it as a movement in its entirety for the Global South.
Well, I always look for one thing, which is more and more people to get involved. And I'd like them principally to first get involved with Tricontinental, build a Tricontinental reading circle, go out there and read the text that we are going to publish at the event, which is on the anti-fascist war. I would like people to be out there reading these things, debating them, discussing them, telling their friends about it, spreading information about it. Because, I mean, without people, we are nothing. And we need to motivate people to come and join us to become part of our movement.
Right, Comrade, thank you so much. But for the sake of our viewers, I would like you to just run us through what our expectations, what the forum is going to look like. What kind of format is it going to take? Because we know that for most of these conferences, we have speakers, they speak, but what's the practicality of it? What really is the format that this is going to take?
Well, the conference is going to be held in Shanghai, in China. There will be speeches given by a range of people. There will be lots of opportunity for people in the audience to get to know each other. They'll eat meals together. They'll be together, in a enclosed space. I'm looking forward to the discussions that take place outside the hall. I'm looking forward to people coming to the various tables and talking about the different organizations. I'm just happy that there'll be a vibrant discussion there, as there is every year at the Global South Academic Forum.
Okay, before I let you go, please rehash why the African audience should pay attention to GSAF. Why should we look forward to it? Why should we want to be a part of GSAF? Just look into our cameras like you're already doing and rehash that for us before we wrap up.
Yeah, I mean, my own feeling is that Africa is in the middle of a really important debate about how to deal with the International Monetary Fund, how to deal with questions of debt, how to solve the everyday problems of the population. At something like the Global South Academic Forum, there will be lots of space to discuss not only how to break through the debt chain, but also how to, for instance, conduct new forms of agricultural or environmental change, how to build, local communities in rural areas so that they are able to, take advantage of their products that they produce. People who come for the conference will be able to talk to the very interesting young people in Ronjiang who are able to transform their own poverty into something that they could market, that where they could bring tourists and so on. So I mean, there's going to be a lot of place for interaction, and interaction that is going to be meaningful.
Right. Thank you so much, Comrade. But if you have any final words you'd like to share with us in terms of solidarity and so on and so forth, please do that.
No, I think we're all set to go. We're all set to go, and we want to see lots of people from Africa at the Global South Academic Forum in Shanghai.
And I'm sure that we're also looking for, I specifically am looking forward to being a part of this and covering and getting the opportunity to speak to most of the intellects like yourself who are going to be there and so on. Thank you so much, Comrade Vijay, for your
Yeah,
time. I know it's about midnight in China, but you stayed up to do this for us. We are really grateful.
yeah. Thanks a lot, Jojo. Take care of yourself, and see you both in Shanghai.
And that brings us to the end of this edition of China Now. From China's expanding technological ambitions and scientific breakthroughs to the strategic realities of US-China relations in Asia. Today's stories remind us on how closely connected our world has become and how every shift in Beijing's policy and innovation resonates far beyond its borders. Please share your thoughts and feedbacks through the email provided below. I am Stanley Kwabla Arku, and this has been China Now.